another episode of Rewiring Health. So honored to be joined by Michelle Prohaska. So thank you so much for being here.
I am so glad to be here. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yes. So, we had connected through a coaching program, and what I love, what you're going to talk about is something that I think we all need to hear over and over again, because a lot of times we think we're going through life alone. A lot of times we think we have to be completely self-reliant and just push harder. But what I love, what we're going to talk about today, is how we can really rely on something that's even stronger in this big force that's in our life. So I would love to just dive into, how did you get started in doing what you do and the people that you help?
All right. So my story starts back in the year 2008 on Father's Day. Of all days, my dad had a brain aneurysm. And people that know my dad would actually understand when I say he would think that was funny. That like if we were able to choose when we leave this world, that he would totally pick Father's Day. Like he would think that's funny. But anyway, so he had a brain aneurysm and was life flighted to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And so we were up there for 4 days, and then he passed. So for 4 days, I had been staying in the same hotel room. And that on that morning, after we had gotten the call that he passed, I went into the bathroom to take a shower. And I get out of the shower, and the mirrors in the bathroom were all steamed over. And I look at the mirror that was on the back of the door, full-length mirror. And I look at it, I'm like, what is that? And written in the steam on the mirror was, "Hi, exclamation point, Dad, I love you," with a smiley face on either side. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm losing it, like I was very, yeah, I just got head to toe chills.
Yeah.
And it's been over 15 years later, I still get chills when I tell that. But so I thought I was going crazy. I mean, I had been very sleep deprived and under a lot of stress. And so I called my husband in to see if he could see it, and he could see it. And so I'm just like, okay, now, even if that had been there before, what are there are thousands probably of hotel rooms around Mayo Clinic. And I got the one room that had this written in the mirror. I'm like, oh, like that. I'm sorry, that is not a coincidence. And so I was really like floored by that, and like, so many questions going through my mind, right? Well, then if we fast forward to the day of the funeral, we had wanted it to be kind of a more uplifting and leave or end on an uplifting note. So we ended with the song Lord of the Dance, and my sister-in-law had the 3 grandkids dance in a circle in the front of the church. And my dad liked to dance, and my family is like fun loving and whatnot. So we wanted to be a little more upbeat. Well, then when we were at the burial, and I'm sitting there in the chairs, which was weird in itself that I was sitting in the chairs, because it's usually somebody else, but I'm sitting there in the chairs, just spacing out, staring forward, listening to the pastor over on the side talking. And all of a sudden, right where I'm staring, a little yellow butterfly lands right on the edge of the vault. And I'm like, I knew I had to keep looking at this butterfly. Like, this was like, there was just something in me that like, don't take your eyes off this thing. And then I swear, this is going to sound a little weird, but I swear it was staring into my soul, like I'm looking at this little creature. And so I just keep looking at it. I don't even know if I kept breathing or not. I was just like, oh my gosh, like there was something in me that told me this was not just a random occurrence. And all of a sudden, that little butterfly started to dance and picked up all of its little legs and moving forward and back and started dancing. And I was just like, after that, I was like, I don't care who you are. Nobody can convince me that that was just a mere meaningless coincidence. Like, there is something to that. So those 2 things, the writing in the mirror and that little dancing butterfly, like changed my life and the way I view life. And I started tapping in and paying attention to all the signs and the synchronicities, and butterflies became my sign. And it was not like every time I saw a butterfly, I'd be like, oh, there's a butterfly. But it was like all in the timing of it. You know, it's like whatever I was thinking or feeling at the time. And it was, you know, if I was thinking about dad and all of a sudden there'd be a butterfly, like, you've got to be kidding. Like I was like in total awe of all of these occurrences. So I was paying attention to the signs and just different synchronicities. I mean, all kinds of things started happening. And I'm like, I've always believed in God or higher power or whatever you want to call it. But I had no idea that God like would talk to me personally. Like these were personal messages just to me. And I'm like, I don't know, I'd never really noticed it before. So I'm like, there's something here. So I started really paying attention to it. Well, then the coincidences actually led me down the path. I had a high school friend I hadn't seen for years, just happened to run into her. She asked if I would be a feature in the newspaper to promote an upcoming event. So I did that. So because I did that, I got tickets for my daughters and I to go to this event. And at the event, the gal was talking about the concept of us creating our lives, creating our own lives. Like our thoughts. And so how I always word it is our thoughts, words, beliefs, feelings, and actions create a reality. So I was like, that as soon as I learned this concept, fireworks went off. You know, there was like something in my soul that I'm like, oh my gosh. And it wasn't even really just like I was learning something. It was like I was remembering something, like my soul remembered this concept. And it was so I would told my mom about it, and then she told me about like the movie The Secret, and there's just more like I went to the library to check it out, and in the window was the book The Secret, and there's just like so many little coincidences that are not coincidences that happen that I was just blown away. So then I could not get enough of this topic, this whole law of attraction topic, and I went down a rabbit hole of like learning as much as I could. Well, then I also started receiving supernatural nudges that I should write a book about this and my whole experience about when dad died and seeing these things. And my first thought, or I shouldn't even say first thought, many thoughts was no way. I do not want to do that. Like I did not want to write, you know, like people are very opinionated about God, higher power, whatever you want to call it. I'm very adamant on that, like whatever makes you comfortable. But there's no, like, people are very opinionated and I didn't want to be told I was doing it wrong and all that. So anyway, long story short, I gave in to the nudges and I'm like, fine. Just give me a minute, because I needed to help myself, like build myself up so that I could actually pull this off and write this book. And let me tell you, it was a roller coaster. And just like all of life it's a roller coaster. Like 1 minute you're like feeling on top of the world, like I can do this, this is great. And the next minute you're zooming down to the bottom, like, what the heck was I thinking? Like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Who am I to do this? All of that. And so I figured out, like in my deep dive of all this personal development stuff, that our vibe matters. And I knew that I needed to be in a higher vibration before I created this thing. So I came up with all kinds of like feel-good tools, and I started meditating, doing different practices like that, gratitude, and being more open-minded about the fact, like these coincidences, like we're not doing life alone. Like there is this force and this power out there that is guiding us through this life. And so just all these different tools that I did, like, and then I finally, it was, the book didn't come out until 2021. And my dad had died in 2008. So that was a lot of roller coaster riding. Let me just say that. Yeah. But then I finally got the book out there. And so now my job is, my mission is to teach everybody about this. And so I'm creating courses that go along with this whole concept about our thoughts, words, beliefs, feelings, and actions create our reality. And when I say that phrase, I always put feelings in all capital letters, because that's our vibration, right? Everything is energy. And so our energy is going to attract like energy.
Absolutely. I love that. And there's so many things I want to dive into, but one thing I want to really highlight and would love for you to kind of expand on it is when you cognitively, you're getting this nudge from the universe to write a book, but cognitively you're like, no, this is crazy, that I'm not a writer. Can you talk about your journey of like listening to that deeper feeling versus the brain or your thoughts that are saying no? Like what's that push pull, or what was that dynamic like? Can you describe that a little bit more?
Right. So what was so weird about the nudges and recognizing them, it was a knowing. And that's something that's so hard to explain, is just that inner soul knowing. So it's like I knew, like there was no doubt, like I knew I was supposed to write it. So during the whole journey, I knew I would write it. I needed to overcome that negative voice that we all have in our head, that bully voice that thinks it's protecting us because it doesn't like change.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was just listening to that voice that kept taking me down that downhill slope of that roller coaster. And if I could do things to like, I'm like, no, that's not, it's like fact checking, right? Like today in the world, we hear information. And so it's like you fact check it, you find out, is that really true? Because there's so much false stuff out there. Well, that's what that negative voice is doing. Like we need to fact check it. So as soon as I teach like being aware of your emotions and how you're feeling. And I'm pretty sure that most of the time when we're on that downward slope, it's because we've listened to that voice. Most of the time it's listening to that voice. So when we listen to, our emotions are a total guide, like everything's energy, plus our emotions create the chemistry in our body. So that's what causes disease and all that, these different things, is because we're listening to that voice, which brings our emotions down. So it's all just about leveling up, and you don't have to be clear up at the top. It's just feeling one step better has a huge effect on that whole vibration, energy, and the chemistry then in your body.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an important point to make, because it is, I think a lot of times we think that things are disconnected. Everything is connected. Our body is connected to our brain, to our mind, to our soul. Everything is connected. So everything interplays that. And when we're in this low vibration, everything goes into survival mode, and our body moves and behaves in a way as if it was. But one thing that I really love about what you talk about is the fact checking. Oh my gosh. Fact checking the thoughts, because for years I that was something I believed, every one of my thoughts, and they were negatively driven, and it did impact my life. It did impact my health. It impacted so many aspects of me, and didn't realize until I did my own exploration how false those thoughts were. So I think this is something we need to really broadcast and scream to the rooftops, that our thoughts are not truth. They are there for protection, but they're not our truth. And it can feel really far. And I remember when I first learned that, I'm like, how is that not my truth? It's in my head, but as you dive into it, you can realize that these are not who we really are, and that we are here for something greater. And it is that deeper knowing that you talk about, and that feeling. And that's one thing I would love for you to dive in deeper. Can you talk about our vibrations and how we can cultivate a higher vibration within ourselves? And if we're stuck in these low vibes of like shame or guilt or fear, how can we start to move ourselves out of this so that we're not stuck in a low vibe?
Well, I have two of my tools are my favorite, and one of them ties into all of my tools, and I call it my hashtag Feel the Smile method. So if you just like right now, close your eyes and just take a really deep inhale, like you're filling your whole body full of air, and then just let it out. So like inhale and just let it all out. And then without moving a muscle, imagine a smile. And the first time I heard of this, I was in yoga class, and at the end of class, my yoga teacher brought this, like had us all do this. And like, I don't remember what was going on that day, how I felt or anything, but I just remember feeling like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even do anything, but I feel so much better. Like I could feel this energy shift. So I kept practicing that method. And then I'm, I had the thought, what if I try to shift that feeling? It's kind of like a warm, fuzzy feeling to my heart space. And it took me a couple weeks to actually be able to do that. But once I did, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is ding, 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 jackpot. This is where it's at, you know? And so holding like that literally takes you 2 seconds throughout the day. So in my courses, I have one of the activities that I have people do is to set a timer on your phone for twice a day. That's just feel the smile. And so just so that it takes you 2 seconds, and no matter what, like if how you are, you just, it's a reset, you know? And so, and it's not about like ignoring your emotions or toxic positivity that a lot of people talk about these days. It's getting in check and realizing how you are feeling and where, you know, where you are on that emotional scale. And then just feeling, like I said before, just one step better or 10 steps better, you know, whichever it is. But so that hashtag feel a smile is also incorporated in my other favorite, which is meditation. So that you know, when I started it, I have now incorporated into my life the rule of 3. If something keeps coming up, don't ignore it. Like, do not ignore the nudges. So meditation came up in my life multiple times in a matter of a couple of days. And so I'm like, okay, I need to try this. And so I started meditating. So I always start meditation with practicing that feel the smile method and getting in that good vibration state. And then just learning to quiet the mind. And I don't sit cross-legged on the floor because quite frankly, that would hurt. And I feel uncomfortable the whole time. You know, I just sit comfortably on my couch with a pillow on each side of me. So I'm nice and comfortable. And I'm, you know, I don't chant anything or anything like that. I'm just breathing and trying to, and I do have a lot of different techniques. And that's also I teach in my courses, is meditation. Just beginning, like bare bones beginning to meditation, and it's quieting those thoughts. So then you can be more aware of that negative voice, because that negative voice doesn't like to shut up. And you realize when you meditate that it likes to just be an ongoing loop in your head all the live long day, you know? So it helps you to quiet that voice down. And what really floored me then, another series of coincidences that I talk about in my book led me to try free writing. So now almost most times after I meditate, I then come to my computer and I sit down and I close my eyes. And at that point, I've been practicing quieting all that chatter in my voice, in my head, that, you know, the negative voice. And I have words come to me like one at a time. And I swear it's like messages from the universe that are just, and I have been blown away by some of the messages that have come through when I've done this. I've even had to Google what some words have meant.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm like, that's how I know, like, this is not for me. And so when you do all these different tools, like you start to just realize like how you're feeling and you know, tuning in to our connection with the supernatural. Like it really is a warm, fuzzy, feel good feeling when you realize that we're not doing life alone.
Yeah, and that we have a guide. You know, if you imagine you always had somebody by you guiding you, the fear response that we go to all the time would be taken off a little bit, because we're not doing everything alone, even though a lot of times we think we are. And when you talk about that experience of like the words coming to you, can you talk about, like, was it something that you saw within your mind's eye? Was it something you heard? Like, how does that come through to you? Just so to get an idea of that.
So that's kind of the tricky part. And that's why I highly recommend that people have a meditation practice that they've been doing for a long time, like quite a while before even really doing and embarking on this free writing experience, because that's how you need that practice of quieting that negative voice so that you can differentiate. You start to differentiate between the two different voices in your head because they sound the same. So it can still sound like that same voice, but it all comes with discernment, right? And I always say, like, this connection that we have and using these tools builds our intuition, which I define as our connection to the divine, the supernatural, whatever you want to call it. And so when we strengthen that intuition, we have better discernment in knowing what voice it is that's talking. But like literally when it comes to me one word at a time, I'm not forming a full sentence in my head and then typing it. You know, so I have nowhere where it's going. And so when I have that experience of, oh wow, I didn't see that coming, you know, that's how I know, like, there really is this communication with the supernatural, and it's literally awesome with a capital AWE, you know, that's awesome.
Absolutely. And so when you have these and then you do the free writing, have you ever had the experience that like you write something and then you experience something in your life and then you go back to what you wrote and it makes sense? Has that occurred with that, or is it different than that?
Yeah, so actually I post some of my free writes on TikTok, and just the last week I had one come to me, and music is another way that I receive a lot of messages, is like I'll get a song stuck in my head. I'm like, why is that song stuck in my head? You know, and it's not like a song that I heard recently, you know. And so then normally I'll look up the lyrics, and I'll understand, like, there's a message within the lyrics that I'm like, oh, okay. So I had a free write that started with, oh, what song was it? Oh, no, I can't even think of the song right now. But I put it out there on TikTok for other intuitives out there. Like, what do you think this means? And as soon as other people started commenting, I'm like, oh, that's totally it. That I wasn't, because I kind of, I say, like, I kind of hide on TikTok, because at first it was like, oh, you know, really nobody that knew me that was following me. And so, because I feel like I kind of have to hide these gifts, you know, that I'm experiencing from the people that know me, because I feel like they're going to think I'm a Fruit Loop. Like, and then that's part of why I didn't want to write my book at first either, you know. And I'm like, this is silly. Like, this is a gift, you know, and I shouldn't be hiding it. So yeah, so I've been hiding out on TikTok, sharing this gift. Did I even answer the question there?
It's just the meaning behind it, really. That's it. Like, you know, having these words, but then giving it meaning, which you know, giving that deeper thought process of how that actually applies to your life. So
well, and so often, like something that came through, like a phrase or something, will come up in my everyday life within the next couple of days. And it's like, that's confirmation there, right? You know, like we can't ignore those synchronicities that's really trying to tell us something.
Were you receptive to this before you experienced the signs from your dad? Were you receptive to this before then, or was this something that came after that?
I was very receptive. Because I always thought, I grew up in going to church and whatnot. And I always thought, well, why would God only talk to people in biblical times? You know? And so I always kind of questioned that. Like, why do we only trust what is said in the Bible and not what other people have, you know? So I think I always kind of knew, like, that this would happen. Like that I would be able to receive supernatural nudges.
Because from things I've learned, and like I'm very like curious about this too, and I've experienced things in my own life like similar to your stories, where it's like it's not a coincidence. Like this could never have happened, you know, like by just, you know, chance, you know, like there's a lot of things I've experienced myself. But what I've learn from that experience is that like you have to be somewhat open to this in order to experience these things. So they may be going on, but unless you're open to it, you're not going to see it. So a lot of times when people are closed off, they won't see the signs, or they won't understand the meaning behind them because they're so skeptical and closed off that they're not going to receive the messages as clearly.
Yes. So being open-minded. So like right now I have a course online that is OMG, I feel good. So it's just a mini course that I might be rearranging in the future. So if you want to get it as it is now, jump on it. But the O stands for open-minded. So being open, like yes, you need to be open-minded. I actually have a chapter in my book that is called Seeing is Believing, or Believing is Seeing. Like, which way is it? It's really believing, it leads to the seeing, and you do have to believe first. And so that's why I have this O is the first thing after you learn the hashtag Feel a Smile, is the O, like being open to like that. Yes, I'm worthy of receiving these signs and messages also. So that is a huge piece.
Yeah. It's so for someone who's listening and maybe they're like, they have no evidence of this in their life, you know, maybe they are someone who is closed-minded and skeptical of this. Where would you recommend someone like that who maybe is curious, but it feels very closed off to it? Where would you recommend that person starting, or just taking one step forward and being more open?
I would start with reading my book. In my book, I talk about like all the different ways, and not even all, because there's no way we could define them all, but many different ways that you can see these signs and whatnot. And so there's a whole section in my book that's all about the different ways that you can see these different signs and synchronicities, and know that it's more than just a mere meaningless coincidence.
Yeah. Amazing. And for
so my book is called Holy BLEEP, That Was Not a Coincidence.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask you. And then for someone who wanted to learn more about what else you offer, where else can they find you?
So my website is michelleprohaska.com. And on there, you can sign up for my newsletter. I send out just even fun little, I'm all about life is meant to be fun. So I send out inspiring, just fun little things, or different information about things I have coming out. And so you can sign up for my newsletter there. You can go to my course tab, and right now you could get that OMG mini course that I talked about. And coming up in the beginning of 2024, I'm going to be starting a library of a whole bunch of just bite-sized little mini classes that you can just take and then start experiencing it. And I'm all about applying. You can't, it's not like my book is not a shelf-help book, it's a self-help book. So you actually have to do the things. So these courses will help you actually apply them, and not just read about them, but actually do the exercises in them.
Love that. Yeah, it is all about taking action. You can learn everything, but unless you really integrate it into your life, it doesn't benefit you. So 100%. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for giving us just this beautiful insight, how we can really cultivate some intuition within our life and use guidance that we already have to really move ourselves forward and in the direction that we're meant to be going in. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely. And again, for everyone listening, if you found benefit in this, or you know someone who would benefit from it, please share it with them and really spread this message that we can rise up and we can really cultivate this trust within ourselves so that we can become the best version of ourselves.
I just realized I also have a PDF that you can download for free that is 10 signs the universe is nudging you, 5 reasons why, and what you should do about it. So we'll put the link in the show notes, I think, on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can download that and get started on looking for those signs.
There you go.